Hey guys, what's cracking? Godsman here, coming at you with another profile. Today we've got an Ava deck profile for you, but not just any deck profile for Ava, it is a monster Ava build. That's right, so with the new reveal of the Archetype ride line, we got some more research cards, and also with those research cards, a pretty interesting combination with monsters. That's right, so monsters isn't really exactly what you consider to be a sub-clan, at least not to any degree that it would be a core strategy of any given deck, but now it is, and not just for Archetype, but because they're tied together by research orders, it is also applicable in Ava, and oh my god, Ava gets a pretty huge power buff from this. The amount of deck thinning and the plussing that goes on with Ava is pretty incredible. So with the extra benefits that the monster engine, as it were, provides, I thought, why not take a look at Ava and give a pretty good deck profile that's been going through a fair bit of testing. I think this is a deck that I would be confident taking to the competitive scene. In fact, I think it can keep up with some of the bigger dogs in the meta, but we'll get more into that when I give the deck breakdown and get my conclusions on it. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so as with any standard deck profile, we first have to look at the ride line. So no real questions here. The ride line is exactly what you'd expect. You start with 0. So 0 is just when wrote upon, if you went second, draw a card. Boom. Then you go to 1, and with 1, it has the very simple skill. When it's placed by writing from, grade 0, then you're able to search for a research card and add it to the hand. Easy enough, you just add any research, not P5 or 7, you just get a research. And what do you know, when you go to grade 2, yes, it's the same freaking thing. If you write specifically on grade 1, you get a research card. Boom. And then we're going to the grade 3, which is Fountain of Knowledge Ava. Now, grade 3 Ava has some pretty intriguing skills, one of them being more intriguing in my opinion than the other. So the first skill is you can CB1, and you can peep the top card of your deck and add a card from among it to your hand. You'll need to reveal it. However, it's not just the top card. The amount of cards you peep is based on the amount of orders that you have, or rather research cards in your order zone that you have. Then from among those cards you get to pick one. This is a really nice skill, and it isn't just for the +1, but the fact that you don't have to reveal is nice. You bot deck the rest, which is a really cool part, because in the late game you can be doing Tsukiyomi tactics and actually know what your bot deck cards are, so that's an X factor, and it gets 5k, and who doesn't like more power? The second skill is when it attacks, you CB1 and Soul Blast 1, search the deck or hand for an Obscudeid, and call it to rear circle. If you did the deck, then of course you shuffle, yada yada. Now, we're going to go into Obscudeid in a minute, but Obscudeid is basically your principal attacker. He is the shiznit, yo. A lot of power, good shield, gets the crit as long as he's placed where you have 3 or more research orders in there. That is pretty easy to achieve, so you've got a 4 attack turn with this deck, with at least one of them having the crit pressure. So it's pretty decent offense, but where this deck's really going to shine as we go through it is in its ability to deck compress and gain massive amount of card advantage. So let's go more into the main deck here. So just to start with, why not go over some of the research orders, as the ride line has been talking about it. So first off, let's go over with the new inclusion, which is the grade 1 research that came with Archetype. Now, this one is at 2 copies only, but it's also really important, so let me explain. What it does is when you play in the order zone, you look at the top 5 cards of the deck, and you add up to 2 monsters from among them, 1 to the hand and 1 to the draw. Now, if you only find 1 monster from among them, then you add it to the hand. You don't need to drop it. So no matter what, as long as you hit a monster, you can pay back the card that you used up in hand to call this to the order zone. Well, not call. It has a second skill though. So once a turn, you can rest it to put a monster from the drop into the order zone. Now, that skill is not relevant in this deck. That's for the Archetype playstyle more exclusively, but Ava can't make use of that, so you won't be doing that. However, it's the first skill that's really important, because you're going to have a few monster search targets. As a matter of fact, we have 11 monsters in total here, not unique cards, just 11 in total card count. So that makes up for over a fifth of the deck, and so in general you should be able to hit at least one off this skill. You could potentially whiff, but you're not whiffing multiple times. Now the reason why we run two, even though this is, the principal card of what makes this combo work, or engine work, is because it's supremely searchable. Quite honestly, all you have to do is ride to grade 1, fetch 1 and play it because it's a grade 1 order. Then, when you ride to grade 2, you fetch the other one and play it. And there you go. You've used both of those cards and it was easy peasy lemon squeezy. And even if you draw into one, it's not a problem. You just search for a different research card and it's all copacetic anyway. Speaking of which, what are the other research cards? Well, I'm also running 2 copies of the promo research. Its name escapes me, but this is the one that really made Ava just go, it's showtime. What it does is it has a continuous skill. Your Obscudeid can't be retired. That's a nice touch. But if you have 4 or more research cards in the order zone, and it can include itself, you can put into Soul to countercharge one and add an Obscudeid from the drop pack to the hand. So it is a supremely cool resource card that also comes with that nice tinge of protection against certain matchups. Certain matchups that would hate to go up against this with these things like Eugene, Gravidia, Balsagra, things like that. You know, retired decks that would love to get that Obscudeid off the field, they're not going to be able to do it. So this is a really nice card that way. You only really need 2 of it because, yeah, it's a really cool resource card, but in this particular version, we actually have another form of countercharge, and Soul isn't as much of a problem because we're not actually running the research successful order, which I know is a debatable choice, but I decided that it wasn't all that necessary. So because of that, even though it's a good resource card, we don't need that much of the resource, but still, the protection is live, but you only need 1 of it, and you can search it from the deck. You already have other stuff. So once you hit 1, that's all you really need, if that. So the other research card we're doing is not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 copies of the brand new research. I think it's a blue lab, like Life is a Blue Lab or something like that. This is a pretty interesting card. So what it does is, upon activation, you look at the top 5 cards of the deck and call something in the rear and shuffle the deck. Straight up, it's a peep top 5 and call something. Now, of course, this can whiff, or you can just not find jack shiznit that you want to go for it, and that would suck. But it's still a research card in the order zone, and there is potential to get some pretty good stuff off this. For instance, you could hit Obscudeid, which we're going to get into in a second, and Obscudeid skill. Spoiler alert for those who wouldn't know what Obscudeid does, but when it's called by an ability, if you have 3 or more research cards in the research zone, not the research zone, the order zone, then it gets a crit. So this counts. Now, it's a grade 3 order, which means that you're only going to be playing it once you go to grade 3 Ava, but the system is rather simple. Usually what you'll do is turn 1, play this, turn 2, play another of that, turn 3, play this, and then turn 4, if there is one, you either play another one of this, or you go in this thing and then use this effect because there's 4 or more research cards in the order zone. So it's a pretty nice and tight system there. This is one that you may or may not be searching out a lot, and you don't necessarily need it, but it's all part of that deck fitting. You're selectively calling something from the deck, and on top of that, it does have the other skill where you Soul Blast 1 and rest your research cards, 3 of them I believe, and you give 5k to you. So that's okay, giving 5k, but it's not that important, and it may not be worth a soul, but there's not many things you're using soul for in this deck, so, you know, have at it, right? It may come up if you're just really trying to push for game, you need to hit the good numbers. So it's a skill worth remembering, but usually not worth activating. So yeah, that's our final research. Moving on to the units of this deck, we're going to start with the man, the myth, the legend himself, 3 Persona Ava, JK.
Surprise,
we all are going to be running that, right? So nothing to explain there. It's Obscudeid. So Obscudeid is a hell of a card. He's basically the Swiss Army knife of this entire deck. Not only is he your principal beater, but he gives you crit pressure, and he is a 10k interceptor from the front row. That is a lot of things that Obscudeid can grant you. Now, a few things to know about Obscudeid. He is your big attacker, and Ava is going to be calling him for multi-attacks. So, as much as possible, you would like to see him, but you don't necessarily need to see him in the hand all the time. That's the thing. You want to be calling him from the deck to proc the crit skill. And for this reason, if you have a choice to add him with the hand with, say, Ava skill or something, you may not be inclined to do it. Sure, he's a 10k shield, but you could just probably hold out with your card advantage to the next turn and then call it from the deck, and bada bing, bada boom. You've got something that isn't just big, but with the extra crit pressure, you may be able to swing for the fences there. This is especially devastating if you hit the Brandgate Overtrigger, because now he's 4 damage. That's probably going to kill. So yeah, just all in all, Obscudeid is an incredible card. With the new blue order that we got, he's more pressuring and more consistent than ever bring out, and with elements of recursion that we can go into later, such as the grade 1 order, he can come back into the late game, and that's really nice. So this is just all around your best rear guard in the deck, hands down, no debate. If there was going to be a runner-up for best rear guard in the deck, it would certainly have to go to Ye Old Combine Rusher at 4 copies, because this card is a nuts staple. A lot of brand decks are running this, and for good reason. So the main skill of note is from the drop, when you play in order, a set order specifically from the hand, you can CB1 and call it to rear from the drop. If you have multiples of them, you're good. Go ahead and get multiples. And it does have a second skill to go with it. When it attacks a grade 3 or greater unit, if your order zone has 2 or more set orders, which, you know, come on, this is Brant, that's probably happening. Oh, small lighting issue, lol. Anyway, this is Brant, so that's probably happening. Guess what? He gets 10k, so he's already a 20k swinger, 30 on a persona. That's really, really good. And because of the fact that he's a grade 2, he's essentially a recurable intercept. Now, you're using CB for this every time, and as you may imagine, CB could end up being rather strenuous because Ava uses 2 with her own skill, but don't fret. CB is not that much of an issue, surprisingly. After all, not all of your effects are really mandatory that you want to see every turn with CB. The only one you really want to see turn after turn after turn is going to be Ava's second skill to get Obscudeid. That's about it. Everything else is gravy. But on top of that, if you do feel like you need to use more CB, but you don't necessarily have enough, you have a couple means of countercharge. We already went over them. The grade 1 order, you know, aka the big resource of the deck. But there's going to be a countercharger in the form of a monster. Many of you may or may not know, and we're going to get him in a bit, but believe me, countercharge is not that much of an issue. So yeah, just run for Combine Rusher. Great beater, good advantage guy, and on top of it all, who doesn't like something that really screams pitch me for right deck? Okay, so next up on the agenda, we're starting to get into the monsters now. Yay! So all the monsters we're running are, as it so happens, grade 1s, and we'll start with the PG. So, as compared to most PGs in the deck profile, I need to explain a few things about this guy. So, you see here, his name is Craggy Beast, but due to recent erratas, there are several units now in Standard who don't have the name monster in their text, but their name is now Errata'd 2 monster. So this is now Craggy Monster Girgrand. And that's important because what this allows you to do is if you peep top 5 off of your grade 1 order and you see this guy, you can add it from the deck to the hand off the top 5. You can have not 1 but 2 opportunities prior to grade 3 to just straight up get a PG to your hand selectively. That is incredible. So that's why we're running him. And now, of course, there's a couple of downsides here to running this PG. Even though it's more searchable than your other PGs, it's weaker than most other PGs. You don't get the skill where if your hand is 1 or less that you don't need to discard, so you will always be discarding for this card. That's not too much of an issue when you have as much card advantage as this deck gets from like all the plussing and the deck filtering and whatnot, but it is still something that may come up in those super strenuous situations, so be aware of that. Another thing is because we're trying to max out our ability to see this PG due to the name, we're not running Elementaria Sanctitude. So you know how that order is. That order is great against certain guard restrict kind of decks, and it's also great against the grade 4 decks in the format. You don't have that in your belt anymore. So this does come with some drawbacks, but I feel that if you're not running him, you're sort of missing out on one of the neatest parts of the monster engine. You could go without them, but I would highly suggest that you do, because having that extra layer of security and ensuring that you can get at least like a PG or two, it can make the difference in the world. So yeah, we're running 4 of the monster PG. The next monster on our roster is going to be 4 copies of Bobalmine. So when most people tell you that Brandgate has the best resourcing when it comes to soul and countercharge in this freaking standard format, Bobalmine is a big reason why. He is the easiest countercharge we have in this format. It simply states that at the end of the battle that it boosted, if your order zone has a set order, and literally every Brandgate deck ever is going to have that, you put it into soul and countercharge 1. It's as simple as it gets, folk. Soul, countercharge. Boom. Condition is like just stupid easy. Doesn't need to hit. And that whole set order thing, as I already stated, it's going to always be there. So bada bing, bada boom. This is just a nice countercharge that is searchable, again, because it is a monster. Ignore the mutant bit. It's Errata'd to monster. So with a searchable soul and countercharge, you would imagine that, oh, okay, so now we have 2 forms of soul and countercharge that are both pretty searchable, one being a research, so you can search that, and the other one being searchable off researches. You're not going to run into that much of a problem. You may get bottlenecked if you don't have these and you want to push, but aside from those rare instances, yeah, you're fine, dude. Bobalmine is another one of the big boons of this deck. Being able to run him just really helps your resources more than I think the average Ava deck would have been able to do. Now, I can see where you would have run Bobalmine anyway in Ava, but just being able to see it more consistently than normal Ava decks is, yep, plus, as you would imagine. Okay, so the final monster we got here is 3 of our satellite monster. So this guy, judging by the Japanese text, is a new card that got revealed for Archetype. And he has a couple skills that work phenomenally well with Ava. So the first one is when he's placed on the rear, if your Vanguard is either an Archetype or a glitter unit, Ava is a glitter unit, so it works with her, then you can Soul Blast 2 and draw a card. It's basically like the classics SB2 draw cards, like how OG Rising Phoenix was, you know, things like that. It's pretty relevant here because you can just essentially use your soul for this and for Ava's skill. So I can see where maybe once or twice in the game you end up using this skill. It's not like a bother to just Soul Blast 2 and bada bing bada boom, free draw. It's nice. He has a second skill though. As long as you have, during your turn, 3 or more research cards in your order zone, he gets 5k. Amazing. You've got a 13k booster or 13k attacker. He could be attacker on his own, or what I like to do with him is have him boost a certain Rushy Man. After all, you're going to make some really nice numbers if you throw down Combine Rusher and you swinging for, let's say on a grade 3 or greater unit, 20 plus 13, 33. Damn, Daniel, 33 is incredible. That's asking for 25. On Persona Ride, it's 43. 43 is one of the most annoying numbers because 43 means that, assuming no defensives, they need to guard for 35. That's more than 2 triggers worth, excluding fronts. That's more than 2 triggers worth. So, unless they PG it, they're probably going to be using 3 cards to guard that column or just taking it. That's a great column. So the fact that he helps enable that in combination with Rusher, you know, just makes him really nice beater and booster. So there's good utility there. And this just really brings home the fact that you're not just running monsters as ways to, you know, thin out the deck. These monsters, they are good tools for you. And I'm gonna pop it up right here, but one that I'm not running due to, you know, limitations in deck size, I had to, you know, make some picks somewhere. There is a certain green goblin man right here, whose name eludes me at the moment, but he has a skill to bot deck a card from your drop, and if it's a grade 3, then you can Soul Blast 3 and draw. Now, of course, the Soul Blast is more strenuous than this one for the draw, so I liked this one better for that reason, but the bot deck is a cool X factor, because you can bot deck Obscudeid. So if you're going to the late game, you may be able to get those Obscudeid back in deck and then call them off of Ava skill, or just use it to simply stave off the threat of decking out, which, yes, this deck can deck out. It decks out about as fast as Youthberg, actually, so there you go. So you may want to run that, cut a monster here or there, or maybe even cut one of the blue order if you want to just really make room for that. I didn't, but I would not be remiss to see some lists doing that in the future. Oh, right, so that was our grade 1 lineup, and we're going to go straight into triggers. So first off, we've got 4 effect crit, you know, standard. Then it gets a little bit more interesting. Running 4 effect draw, 3 effect front, 4 normal heal, and 1 over trigger. Okay, so let me explain a few things here. So the thing that needs the least explanation, I feel, is the crit. You know, the crit just makes a lot of sense. It's anyone is liable to run at least some crits because crits win the games, right? But what's up with the 4 draw and the 3 front? So the rationale behind this is that I like Rainbow for the versatility in which you can get your trigger effects and what you can do with them. It has more versatility in shield too. The 10k shield is sometimes all you need, so you know, you're not exactly under guarding, you may be perfectly guarding rather than over guarding with a 15, so that's cool. But getting the extra draw power just helps you to see more pieces, get you more advantage, because you're winning based off an attrition type style. You're going to be outvaluing the opponent more times than not, I think. And because of that, the trigger really helps there. More lighting issue. So in spirit of that, you know, you don't really feel bad for running a few draw triggers here. The fronts are another X factor. In the Ava attack order, when you attack with her, you're going to have the Obscudeid you called, and presumably another card in the other column there. So you'll be giving 3 units the front trigger. That's a really nice bonus. It's good for your attack patterns, but on top of that, the 20k shield is pretty relevant. I just thought, hey, sometimes it's really nice to have that 20k shield. So I've been migrating a little bit more to fronts, but I don't want to exclude the draws, and of course crits are really good. So running a bit of everything feels good. And because of your ability to manipulate the deck with Ava a bit, in a situation where you don't have many cards left in deck, I mentioned this before, but you can sort of Tsukuyomi it, or you stack particular triggers for the situation that's coming up, and then you know what you're going to get, and that trigger is going to be perfect. So sometimes you'll want the front, other times you'll just want the crit. After all, since Obscudeid is coming with crit pressure anyway, sometimes getting the front is a better idea than just getting the crit. So that's why I like to run the Rainbow here. As for the heal triggers, they're their own animal, of course, and I'm gonna have to explain that a bit. The heal triggers in my previous deck profile, which was the Bav Sakura deck profile, I'm not going to say link down in the description, but go check it out on my channel if you're interested in that as well. Anyway, in that one, I kind of ragged a little bit on the effect heals, and I still don't like them. I don't like them at all. I think that they're too situational. I think the format is diverse enough that you're going to see different strategies of different kinds out there, so they may very well just end up being 10Ks in hand, and I don't really like that very much when I'm already running a lot of other 10Ks. I want to be able to reliably see 15s. So, yeah, I don't like them. However, I am going to say here that this is just my opinion. There are plenty of competitive decks that do, to some extent or another, run those effect heals. Maybe not at 4 copies, or not even a 2-2 split between heals. They may split it to where it's like 1 effect heal and 3 normal heal. They may have 1 of each effect heal and 2 normal heals. You could really switch it up based on what you're expecting the meta to be like. Although, when Set 7 comes out, let me just say, we're going to be going up against Youthberg, and we're also going to be going up against Ebisu. And for those of you who knows how those decks operate, neither of those effect heals are going to be that viable against those 2 particular decks. Now, I know that if you're in English like me, maybe Ebisu is not that much of an issue, so okay, fine, whatever. That's not too big of a dealio. But still, Youthberg is going to be a pretty big threat here. Going to be probably one of the biggest contestants in the format come Set 7, and those effect heals aren't doing anything to it. So I don't feel like losing shield value on a matchup like that you're probably going to be seeing a lot. So for that reason, I personally go for 4 heal, but you would not be remiss to take it your own way if you feel those heals are worth it. You know, you just shield differently and you play differently to allow for that to still be viable in the deck. Okay, and that was the deck. So overall, what do I think about Eva? Well, honestly, I think this deck could very well be one of the big decks coming up here. Now, of course, we're going to have to wait until set 8 for it to do so, and it's still going to have steep competition from the likes of the Youthberg. But in testing, I've had this been played against me a lot, and I am a really big Youthberg guy. Youthberg is my main. I play it very well. And I will say, this deck is a struggle to fight against. The consistent access to the PGs, the supreme level resourcing, a nice consistent way to multi-attack with crit pressure, it's got a lot of variables going for it. This is a difficult deck to beat through because of the amount of cards you get. After all, this ride line is plus you like a mother fruit. This is a +1, this is a +1, this is potentially a +2, and then keep in mind that these pluses are rather selective and they can get you more cards that can plus you even more, like the Antenna Monster, Combine Rusher is a plus in of itself. You just keep on going with the amount of value that you get. So because this is such a very value-based deck, I can't help but compare it to Youthberg. As a matter of fact, they're also both 4 attack decks. And just to kind of throw the shade, they both have deck out problems potentially, but that's beside the point. Yeah, I think this deck is incredibly strong, and I don't know this for certain, but I'd be inclined to say that the monster variant of Eva is going to end up being the dominant variant once people come around to it. Now, of course, this isn't set in stone. Maybe things will go out differently. Maybe this won't even be that big of a deal in the meta. Perhaps if not enough people are championing it, for instance. However, I'm just going to lay my money down and say it'll at least be very highly competitive, more viable than it even is right now, and Eva is already currently viable. So it's very ironic how the Archetype cards, despite being, you know, for her, the fact that they are just research cards, they make Eva even more stupidly strong than it already was. It feels almost more like Eva support than it is Archetype cards, so yeah, take that for what you will. But at the end of the day, it's a really fun deck to play. It's really solid, good aesthetic. I'm not going to say best girl, but Ava's pretty cool. Like Archetype a little bit better aesthetically, but again, beside the point. And yeah, I think those are going to really sum up my thoughts on this deck. This is still somewhat, I would argue, a work in progress. I feel pretty confident in this deck list, but there are some things that you can do. Putting in a couple of the Goblin guy like before is something I mentioned. You could also switch up your trigger ratios a bit. You may want to run more fronts, more crits, less draws. That could be switched up to your liking. That's not set in stone. You could reduce the amount of orders you have in the deck. After all, orders are not shield value, so if you find that you have guarding problems somehow, then that's one avenue that you can take with it. Maybe take out a blue order or even one of the promo order, things like that. So there's ways you can adjust it slightly, maybe even raise up your monster count. I know the buddy of mine who first was playing this deck and, you know, showed me its glory, he's currently considering going up to 12. So that is something to consider if you're not seeing your monsters consistently enough and just throwing a little bit more monsters. If you have any questions about it or comments, criticism, anything like that, I would love to hear it down in the comment section below. If you did like this video, I've got a lot of other deck profiles on my channel, as well as just a lot of other different Vanguard related content. Got tier list videos, discussions, fight nights, top 10s, the whole shebang. So yeah, go ahead and check that down. And if you like what you see, consider subscribing. Turn on the notification bell as well if you want to see my next upload. And with that, take care and God bless.